This is the Bitcoin Made Simple podcast. Here's your host, Corey Tusick.
This is the Bitcoin Made Simple podcast. I'm your host, Corey Tusick. On today's episode, I interview Guy Swann. Guy, if you don't know him, he does Bitcoin Audible. He also has a podcast, Shitcoin Insider. But Guy has been around. He's pretty much an OG. He started back in I think 2011, and he does Bitcoin Audible, where he reads a lot of articles and things and puts them in audio format so that you can consume them while you're doing yard work or whatever. And I've learned a lot from that. It was one of the resources that I used when I was getting into this. But we had a great conversation. We talked about a little bit. I mean, we have a similar background, and he was in the movie business for a short period of time, and then did some. We got into his videography background and what it was like shooting wedding videos and all that fun stuff. And then we talked about a little bit about what it was like to see Bitcoin grow up, and he told me about his first investment and how he got absolutely wrecked and destroyed. And then also, I asked for a little perspective on what it was like to live through the Bitcoin Cash hard fork in 2017. Because for those of us that weren't around then, that had to have been, we can't really understand what it was like. And it was good to get a firsthand perspective because it must have been pretty terrifying. But yeah, so we this interview goes a little long. Here at the end, we didn't even realize how long it went. Went about like 2 hours and 15 minutes, I think, or 2 hours and 20 minutes, something like that. I felt so bad. So I felt like I was holding them up. But we had a great conversation, and it was, I learned a lot, and I hope that you do as well. Thank you so much for listening. Here is my interview with Guy Swann.
Fine by me.
Get into it.
Do you do video? Do you post video for these?
Yeah. You cool with that going on YouTube?
Yeah. That's fine. I was just curious. I don't pick my nose in the middle of
the that's all recorded now, so we can
awesome.
Yeah.
Throw that right in there. Make sure you start before that point.
Yeah. Well, hey, thanks for coming on, man. I appreciate it. I've been listening to you for a while, but I had to ask. So, because I heard you mention it before, but also in your latest podcast with Preston, you mentioned that you have some video background, and I'm in the film business. I mentioned it to you in our DMs, but
I remember.
What's your background in the movies? I mean, has it just been straight video production, or did you work on like movie sets ever? Or?
I've worked on a couple of smaller movie sets. We did worked on 2 independent films while I was in Los Angeles. But I went to film school, like when I was in high school, for some reason, like I was always really nerdy and like kind of the science guy, and everybody assumed I was, everybody told me I was going to be an engineer. You're going to be a great engineer, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, I don't know. Like, doesn't feel for me. Like I did Science Olympiad. So like I actually, which I genuinely account for 95% of my education was just building stuff for the Science Olympiad competition. Like high school was worthless. Yeah, so Science Olympiad, I credit for the vast majority of my education, just building little robot things and stuff for these competitions and stuff. And it was fun. So I always thought that's what I was going to do. But like something in high school, I was just sold that I was going to be a movie director. I just wanted to make movies. And went to film school and had an absolute blast and got an internship with Scott Rudin Productions out of high school. So the guys who did the Team America World Police, all the South Park things, and the other Bolin Girl, and all Wes Anderson films. It's a pretty big, pretty awesome production company. It was cool to be there.
That's an awesome internship.
Yeah, seriously. And then worked with a couple independent films out there through just connections and stuff that I had and friends. And then I don't know. There was something about the scene that I didn't like too much, and I was broke and just tons of credit card debt just to stay out there, you know?
Oh yeah.
And at some point I just kind of like, I didn't see a clear path to doing what I wanted to do. So I came back to North Carolina and started a little media business.
Mm-hmm.
And did mostly wedding videos. I really wanted to do like local commercials, and I did do local commercials and little videos and music videos and stuff, but there was no money in it. You know,
Yeah.
like the only thing that you could actually make money on, that you could charge a few
Premium on.
$1,000s, like what it was actually cost to do a film like that. You couldn't do that for anybody who's going to do a music video or a dance video. You know,
Oh
those were the things
no.
that I had more fun doing, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and then I just got, after like 3 or 4 years, I was just so sick of it. I couldn't make any of the wedding videos feel unique, and it became cookie cutter to me.
Yep.
And I worked really hard to make it so that like the video felt like the people that I got to know, the bride and groom,
Mm-hmm.
because I get to know them and do like some introductory like documentary things like weeks ahead and stuff. So I put like a lot of work into it, and I really enjoyed it at first. But then they just became another video and another shot of the shoes and another shot of the dress. And that's where you really make the money, if you can cookie
Oh
cutter
yeah.
the thing, but it becomes no fun to make the film, you
Yep.
know? And you just start stamping these things out. And then I just quit and went back into techie stuff and became an internet technician and bounced around for a bit. And then Bitcoin fell in my lap, and I just couldn't find the time to do anything else. I just Bitcoin was it, and now
Bitcoin
we're
dominated the world.
started into the podcast and have done that for years now. And after years of like basically coming to terms with the fact that like I didn't really consider myself a filmmaker anymore, because that's not what I did.
Mm-hmm.
And I did on occasion, like I would still do a music video or a little dance video or whatever, like my sister, and like she's big in the dance scene or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And she's been living with us for a while. We have a little crew. So I still did little things, but it certainly wasn't my focus, particularly after Bitcoin just consumed everything in
Yeah.
my life pretty much. And but now we're back around. We've started up a new production company for the podcast. And my wife, we're seriously talking about her going full time with me. She wants to do it. She's been loving the little bit involvement that she has been able to do, has been
Mm-hmm.
able to spare time for. And yeah. Now we want to get back into video.
Well, that's awesome.
Full,
And I
full
mean,
circle, all the way back around.
it always works that way, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Because that's yeah, I mean, I took that kind of like journey of, you're like, wow, like I can't make a living just like slaving away and making little money. You get into I got into the corporate world, and now I'm back full circle. That's something we'll have to talk about. This we'll have to talk after we're done with the podcast, because that's, I don't know if I started a streaming platform, and we just
Okay.
are
Yeah.
locking in our first we're finishing off the Series A funding, and we're going to have apps launched in like June. Spoiler alert, crap, I shouldn't do this, but anyways, the plan is to have them, they're going to line up with the Bitcoin conference, and then we're going to have some crew at the Bitcoin conference doing working on the documentary that we're working on. But we're hoping to like time it all out, so that we have this like really really sick awesome trailer that we hope to release soon, and then like just kind of build off that. But anyways, offline we should talk about that kind of stuff, because I think there's a lot of opportunity for entertainment in the Bitcoin world, and even like silly stuff like animation,
Yeah.
like
Lucio Paletti and like the stuff that Ione is doing, even though like they're like little instructional, like kind of they're audio heavy.
Mhm.
But Lucio Paletti has like that little cool Super Satoshi thing, and
Yeah.
he does those like neat little animations. Now I think there's a really big missed opportunity, or untapped potential in exactly that. I totally agree.
Yeah, and that's I'll throw just a teaser out there then, because the animated show that I have an idea for that we've been kicking around, because that's the thing. The hard part is now we have to get into like all the production of everything we want to do for our
Oh yeah.
platform,
Yeah.
and so the one idea is to make a show called The Citadel, and just have it be like a Bitcoiner that like completely cuts themselves off from like the rest of the world, in a citadel, and just kind of like take like the Simpsons Family Guy route with it. um like I thought about like Max Kaiser. I don't know him, so I don't know what his like, if he'd be up for this, like being able to like kind of like poke fun at himself or something. But I picture
Yeah.
him like living in the citadel, and like he doesn't have anything to rant about anymore because like Bitcoin has become like has taken over. So then like like he could be just like a character that like he's a neighbor, and you like go over and you're like, hey Max, how you doing? He's like, I'm good. He's like, I was planting these tulips on the driveway, but the tulips, they won't fit. And, just like start flipping out about like the tulips, they won't fit in there. They're not gonna, I water them too much, and blah, 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 and he just flips out about it. But I don't know the guy, so I don't know if he'd be cool with like playing.
I kind of feel like Max would enjoy that. In some way, he just would.
So we'll have to see here. That's that would be fun. But yeah, and before we get into the like Bitcoin heavily too, the wedding videos, I feel like it's every something everyone in the film business does at some point.
Yep.
And it is like you said, the first time you do it, you're like, oh man, like I'm expressing so much emotion for this couple.
Mm-hmm.
And then by the end, I don't know if this was your way. By the end, I couldn't even finish them. I was like farming the workout. I was just like, I can't bring myself to do this. Like,
Yeah. I would spend so much time, and definitely the earliest ones I had the worst equipment on, but the most passion in actually getting the project done. And then the later ones I had the best equipment, and because that's all I ever did. I mean, we were living next to nothing, like cost wise. And this is actually around the time I first stumbled upon Bitcoin, was right at the end of this era of things. And I was barely scraping by and just basically turning all the money around to buy a new camera or a mic or a light or something,
yeah,
And but the editing I would just hate that, I would edit this like 15 minutes and it would just feel exactly like the last two that I did, and that I couldn't figure out how to get like a unique feel or some unique thing. And there's no finish button on editing, it's not like particularly like even with a podcast, it's different, like with a podcast, like there's only so much editing you do. You just kind of cut out the fat, or when you went down a tangent and you realize for like 2 minutes it just has nothing to do with anything, and you're just like, maybe you'll cut out some little pieces like that, but when I get to the end of recording, I'm pretty much done.
Yep.
And then I just publish and get details. Not with video. When you're cutting different scenes, you can turn the whole video on its head. Like you could re-edit and redesign the whole thing from start to finish with the exact same footage. You could tell totally separate stories just in how you put it together and how you overlap this audio piece to attach to this, and I would get to a point where one of them where I would just come up with a good idea halfway through it, and I would just start back over. Like I would just be like, oh, I'm going to do it this way. And then when you're at the end of it, you're like, it's decent, but this transition maybe could be cleaned up. This B-roll footage could probably be better. Maybe I could find something else in my 18 hours of video. Let me just scroll through for the next 3 days. But there's no finish button. There's no, like, you just have to basically say, okay, I'm so sick of this that I don't care enough to make it better. And then you just like print.
Yeah.
That's you just get to the point where you give up. Basically.
It's over. Yeah. I can't handle this anymore. I'm done. Yeah. And like you said, I mean, like the first one I did was my older brother's wedding, and it was while I was in college, and it was like, I mean, it was like super cool. It was obviously a wedding that I was like, like emotionally attached to. So like I had more emotion in it. I had my friends, record, and then I edited afterwards. And like, I got to see friends and family like, whoa, that was so cool. That was great. And then like,
Yeah.
and then like you get to the point where you just like, you hand like a bride, like a DVD, like a month after their wedding. You're like, here you go. They're like, thanks. Like in like a Target parking lot, you're like, like here's the DVD.
Can you meet me at the gas station at the corner?
Yeah. Like, hey, I would meet you in my office, but it's really busy. So, let's meet at the gas station. But, anyway, so you were talking about towards the end of that journey is when you got into Bitcoin. And I know you probably talked about this, tons of times before, but get into that a little bit. I mean, when was that, and how did you stumble upon Bitcoin?
Oh yeah. One of the things my brother was majoring in, who's Jeffrey, who's Agorist View on Twitter, and uh, he was majoring in economics at the time. So he was back in school while I was doing this, and then he was doing video work for me over the weekends. Like I was just getting him to do the extra camera work. And he would just, economics didn't make sense. It just didn't. And it wasn't because it was complicated. It was because it contradicted itself all the time. And he would basically argue with his professors in class.
That's awesome.
You like laid out this supposed principle like a couple of days ago. And now basically what you're saying here today is that if it's really big on the macro level, that it doesn't apply anymore. And it's like, that cannot possibly be true. Like there's no, like gravity isn't different like when it's a pebble versus when it's a planet. Like that's why it's a law,
Yeah.
like these things, all you've done is confuse it. Like all you've done is just make it more complex and bigger. So it's harder to see, but this must be true if it's true here,
Mhm.
And so he would debate with them, and he literally like went and argued with one professor after hours one day for like hours, literally. And my brother's a very stubborn person. And so he would come back and he would be like, so I learned this, but I think it's all bullshit. And we would just kind of dig into it, and he would explain it. And then we would go online, start hunting around for different ideas. And we went down a couple of we actually went to MMT theory, like modern monetary theory first, because that actually makes a lot more logical sense than Keynesianism, in my opinion. That it is just a scoreboard, but you still have to break it back down to actual resources to understand what it means when somebody's fudging the numbers on the scoreboard. So we went the MMT route first, and followed and actually corresponded back and forth over email for a couple of weeks with a guy named Warren Mosler, economist, who was actually advised one of the presidents. I can't even remember. But he was actually really cool that he was open to having an email conversation with my brother, but both of us really.
Yeah.
Doing the emails. And but anyway, long story short, we basically were just going down this huge economics rabbit hole, and then found Hayek. And suddenly so many things that we were trying to make sense of were clicking. And Austrian economics just fit. And we were, like I said, I was a nerd and I was a geek, and I was a huge fan of like the internet pirate culture. And BitTorrent protocol fascinated me. And then also we were going down the libertarian rabbit hole, and then we stumbled upon Hayek in the whole economics thing. And then that clicked with that. Like suddenly all three of these things, this trifecta of techie, nerd, pirate, internet culture, and libertarian culture, and then sound economic theory, were just like, oh, this stuff fits together. It's the same thing, So we're like in this trifecta of basically all the theory and philosophy that would make Bitcoin make sense. And he's arguing with some dude on Facebook, and he sent him a private message and said, you'd probably be really interested in this Bitcoin thing. And this.
So your brother was arguing with somebody on Facebook.
My brother was arguing with somebody on social media, and got a private message from him. Says, I heard about this thing called Bitcoin, and I bet you would be interested. And this was like 2011.
Oh wow!
And
you guys are OGs, almost OGs.
Yeah, we just were down the rabbit hole like instantly. Like these are all the things that we are interested in right now. And basically, Bitcoin is the codification of Austrian economics into an internet protocol. It is the BitTorrent of money, and it is a libertarian weapon. Like it's all three of these things. And we were like, holy shit, this is going to be the biggest thing ever. And I remember I tell this because we were just getting blasted that night, just drinking and just completely zoned on everything Bitcoin. We read the white paper immediately. We were immediately scouring everything we could get our hands on, trying to find the software. And we're just like off, like, oh my God, this is gonna be crazy. Holy shit, this is sound money. Oh my God, this is a revolution, blah, blah, blah. And I remember we were sitting in the back room and the sun was coming up. And we had gone for like 8 or 9 hours just talking about this thing that we had just discovered. And legit, it was the next day. Like the sun was rising. We were like, well, crap, we got to go to sleep or something maybe, which probably wasn't going to happen anyway. And then we scrambled. There was nowhere to buy it, and we were scrambling to try to figure out how to get a hold of some. And it was in the middle of that first huge run up from like, it started at like 10 cent, I think, actually, because there's this little blip. There's actually this huge explosion in the bear market that happened before almost any of the charts that you actually see, because that was the only price data at the time, but it's no longer in the charts because it was such like a tiny little thing. It was native, and yeah, it was basically like from a tenth of a penny to $1, and then it crashed back down to like 10 cent.
Oh wow!
And so it basically made 100x in that range, but it 1000x or whatever in the meantime, and then crashed back down. And then the next one was from about 10 or 20 cent upwards to $30 when it peaked, and then crashed all the way back down to about $2 or like $1.75, I think. And that was when we were finding it, when it was on the way up, and we were scrambling. We were dead broke. I mean, we didn't have any money to speak of. And the price
shaking
just
your cushions in your couch.
Yeah, yes, just anything. And it's the shadiest thing ever. We had to like move money to like 3 different services. I can't remember, but all of them were new. I mean, it was the shadiest thing I'd ever done on the internet ever. And like, as someone who was part of pirate culture back then,
I was going to say, if you were in
it was still shadier. It was crazy.
Shady, that's pretty bad.
And we put the only money we had, which was our joint savings given to us by our grandmother. We just dumped it all into it at the absolute tippity tip top of this thing, like scrambling to get in. It took us like a week, and in that week it went from like $4 to $30, and we bought it like the just damn tip top, and then it absolutely crashed. We just got obliterated. The very first thing we did in Bitcoin was earn our bear market badge.
You guys got crushed immediately.
Just demolished. I remember the amount that we had back then to invest was $1,000, and that was epic money to us. Like,
oh yeah,
our rent was nothing at the time. Like I said, I was just barely scraping by with the media business because I was just reinvesting all the money. And we had stupid low rent because it was from a family friend who just wanted to not have a cost,
Yeah.
And I remember I did the math one day, that $1,000 after just like 2 or 3 months had turned into $75. And and it didn't even cover like our electricity bill or whatever. And it was like one of the same months that our water had gotten cut off because our payment had bounced and we didn't realize. So we like lost water that day, and then and this was my first I was like, I'm gonna be an investor and all this crap. And
at night, drinking all night and sitting there going, "This is the future," and then it just.
And it was miserable. It was God. Like people don't even know. Going through bear markets these days is like not even. It's not even a thing. Like, and
it could drop to $1,000. You'd be fine.
It's just throwing up and trying to come to terms with what a stupid decision I made. And I was just thinking, so, I want to know if, did I get into something idiotic, that I just invest the only money we had in this huge pipe dream and something that I really knew nothing about. Right.
Mm-hmm.
Like I read the white paper and then pontificated on what revolutionary thing this was. And if anybody asked me any specific question about it, I could answer. Like I couldn't tell anybody anything about it really.
Yeah.
And I was like, so I've just made a deeply ignorant decision based on a very deep lack of information about what I'm actually investing in. I'm at least not going to get out unless I know what I'm getting out of. Because there's at least a lot of passion to it. And if it does work, it would be amazing. And so I just started reading, and
you guys
read every single thing that I could possibly get my hands on against it, for it. I mean, if it just mentioned Bitcoin, I was reading it. And the more and more I read, the more I was like, we're just early. And then we dove deeper into Austrian economics and libertarianism and all of it. And then 10 years later, still that's just what I'm doing. And so I just read and dig everything that I can get my hands on. So, and it seems to have worked.
Yeah, I would say. So you didn't sell at $75 then?
No, the only significant like Bitcoin that I don't have anymore is because I lost it. Like it's because of burned keys. But no, I've never like sold, like I'm getting out of Bitcoin because I'm scared and I gotta get out of this investment. That is the one thing that I have never done. I've lost Bitcoin, but not because of that.
Yeah. That is man, that's crazy. So you suffered then the biggest crash you could possibly handle.
Yeah. They actually think it was percentage wise the biggest crash. That one was the biggest one. So
and how long?
Right out the gate. How much was the dip?
Well, yeah. How long did it take for you to drop from $1,000 to $75?
Oh, it wasn't even that long. It was like 3 months. It was like 3-4 months.
Oh wow.
It wasn't even a full half a year, I don't think. Like it was just every day. It was just every day. I was just losing bukus of money.
Like, should we pull? Oh man, that's crazy. So that makes what everybody's going through now seem like nothing.
Yeah, I just get excited when I see red candles now. If there's no new, like Bitcoin, all Bitcoin has to do is not die, right? All it has to do is just keep working. And if I go check when the price drops, I go check a block explorer. Did another block come in? Nothing's wrong,
Yeah. You're at it. I mean, they say buy the dip, that's what I've seen. That's obviously the recommendation. And at first I was like, oh, I get the theory behind that. But now I'm like, into this for a little over a year now. And I'm like, I think I tweeted something whenever it was about to dip below 50K a couple weeks ago or something. I said, like, if you're willing to sell me your Bitcoin for $48,000, I will gladly eat your lunch. Like, and it was just like, and I'm like sitting there like, oh my God, like it was just 2 months ago that we're like sitting there, and everybody's like, oh, is it going to reach the all-time high? I mean, 3 months or whatever it was at this point.
Yeah. Back in December.
Yeah, it's like get to 19, 20, maybe.
It'll never break through 20. It's going to crash. Peter Schiff was certain.
And now it's at like today, it's like at 55, and people are upset. People are like, "Oh my God, this is terrible." Like, oh my God, no, it's not. And I don't want to earn my bear market badge, because nobody does. But yeah, I feel
I
like
got to. It's a rite of passage. It's a rite of
I
passage. You got to.
I feel like it's unfair though, because I feel like I'm not worthy to call myself a Bitcoiner. Like this comedian had me on his podcast to be like his Bitcoin expert, and I was like, the way he like introduced me, I was like, whoa, 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 whoa. I was like, I just bought it like
Calm
a
down.
year ago. Like
Stay humble.
I was like, I am nowhere near an expert. I was like, I can walk you through where to buy it. I can give you some theories. I was like, but I just started a podcast so that I can learn everything I can because
Yeah.
I know nothing. But yeah, I feel like I'm like, oh, like I'm not worthy. I'm not worthy because everybody else has suffered these things, and like, and I bought in like a year ago. Like it was when COVID.
You're basic. I was about to say you basically have been just in profit. You've got nothing but upside, right?
Oh yeah, the lowest that anything went, I think I was down like 15% at one point, and and that was whenever I was like, "Whew, man, I don't know, that hurt." But I kept thinking to myself like it's nothing compared to what other people did, and I was like, I'm willing to let this go to zero. You know what I mean? Like I'm willing to
Yeah.
die on this hill.
Yeah.
Um, and then
That's absolutely where I am. If it goes
yeah,
back to 75, it is what it is.
yeah, and I just sat there, and yeah, I mean, you know, it's been uphill, and I'm trying to time I'm not trying to time anything out. It's just like whenever I have more cash, I'm like, boom, put it in, um, and and it hasn't gone down. So I'm saying that completely naively, and I'm gonna get wrecked eventually, like everyone does. But
We all
yeah,
do.
I feel like then so as much as I enjoy this bull market, I'm like eagerly waiting for it to like come crashing down so that I can be like, I was there through the tough times, like I stuck it out.
The story's just as good, right? Like just as
Yeah.
long as you got your sats stash, like you gotta get through the tough times. The tough times make you the market Chad, give you those diamond hands.
Oh yeah. Yeah. And I mean, like, I feel like there's no way with like the new, with like Michael Saylor and Elon and everything, like there's no way those guys don't have diamond hands. So like I can't fathom a scenario where like they bet that amount of money and they're going to be like, oh, you know what, we changed our mind. Like it lost 30%. We change our philosophy completely. That's not going to happen.
Yeah, no. They're
but
doing it to hold for 5 years, 10 years, like they're not. And Michael Saylor has basically said pretty much that exact thing, right? Is that this is our reserve strategy. This is just how we are holding our treasury now. And like even shortly after one of the purchases, there was a big dip. And
didn't he buy more?
People people were like saying or guessing or whatever, speculating, excuse me, that's the word I was looking for, speculating that, oh my god, I bet Michael Saylor, because he's got like a 10% loss or 15% loss or something on the stuff that he just bought, I bet he's selling or whatever. And that's when they announced like they were doing like $450 million more was when the prices dipped, and they're like, yeah, we bought like another 20,000 Bitcoin or something stupid like that. It's like, I don't think Michael Saylor very well.
No. And I don't think they understand billionaires very well, because they don't make like they don't make gut decisions like that. Where do you think, like, who's going to be the next one that comes in, I guess, is the question. Who's going to be the next big name if you had to guess?
Man, that's a tough one. I genuinely thought Apple would have been in by now because they're sitting on so much cash, and they have got to have a huge swath of people there who are trying to figure out what the hell to do with the cash,
Instead of letting it sit
some sort of yield rather than just letting it bleed out. So I definitely would have assumed, if you asked me 2 years ago, I'd been like, nah, Apple would have an allocation. So that one kind of surprises me because they are so profitable. And there are a lot of companies that aren't profitable. Uber and Tesla.
Tesla's not profitable.
So because of that, That one surprises me. I kind of thought the Oracle news made sense. That one just kind of fits.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, I think we'll see a lot of. I think we'll see a lot more hedge funds. Particularly, I think with the ETFs coming on board finally, that will be an easy mechanism for them to justify it. To have an allocation toward Bitcoin. And I'm I'm also surprised we've only seen one insurance company, Mass Mutual. I thought that was going to be a little bit like Bitcoin is insurance, right? Like it is
Mm-hmm.
insurance against systemic financial instability, which is freaking everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought they would have been kind of primed to see the asymmetric bet of Bitcoin. But I think it's just where I thought there might be a focus in one specific thing, we've seen dabbles everywhere, right?
Mm-hmm.
Is that there's been a little bit in the tech like Tesla and MicroStrategy or whatever, and then there's been Mass Mutual and insurance, and then there's been 3 or 4 hedge funds. In fact, hedge funds are still probably the dominant, aside from the
Mm-hmm.
fact that there's more capital in like Tesla and MicroStrategy. For the number of companies that have gotten involved, I would still say hedge funds are probably the dominant that have started
Mm-hmm.
to weave their way in. And I just expect that to continue to unfold. Fidelity's involvement is incredibly entrenched at this point, but they're very, very slow growing because they've been in Bitcoin now for like 5 years. 6 years.
Mm-hmm.
They've been running nodes and mining in their little Bitcoin division, which is really cool. And I've actually gotten to speak to a couple people like over there, and they're very serious about it. But they've been very, very cautious and very, very slow to build it up. But I think this year is going to be a really big deal. I think we're going to start seeing things roll out, particularly with like Wells Fargo now, letting institutional like anybody with more than $2 million invest directly.
Mm-hmm.
I think we're going to see a lot of different banks start to mimic that and start to actually integrate. And with NYDIG and Strike, basically just blasting through the wall like the Kool-Aid man and being like,
Yeah.
suck it, guys. Like, we're going to take everything from y'all. I think people are scrambling right now.
The banks.
I think if Western Union isn't making a Bitcoin and Lightning strategy, they're doomed.
Oh,
They're
yeah.
absolutely doomed. And
It's
I
come a
think
long way since their horse and buggy days. So they should.
yes, yes, it has. So I think we're going to see a lot of that. I actually think we're going to see an explosion in payments
Mhm.
and remittances because of what Strike and NYDIG are doing. And
Dude, I've been trying to get on strike because one of my companies, we like pay out royalties to the rights holders for films. And I'm like, oh my God, this solves one of the biggest problems I have, which is bank fees and transfer times.
yep,
And right now we use a couple different companies, and it allows for like it allows for fast transfers, but the apparatus behind that's crazy. Like we can transfer to anybody anywhere in the world within 48 hours, but like that includes China. But the companies we use have to have bank accounts in every single one of these countries with enough capital to cover everything, so that they can just look at their internal sheet and just make the transfer. So it's not an actual transfer from my account to that person's account. It's going to this payment company who then happens to have a bank account there. And it's
yeah,
like it's the
yeah,
first time I heard about Strike, I was like, oh my God, this is such a huge. And I mean, we're nowhere near as big a client as they could possibly do, but I've been emailing them like nonstop, and like the support person there, the poor girl or guy, whoever it is that keeps getting my emails. I'm like, look, I want to be one of your first customers. Like, let's go. Like, I wanted February 1st. I was like, I want to send something by the end of February. Can we do that? And they were like, maybe by fall. I don't know. Like, we're still pretty early, but I agree with you. I think it's going to explode. Like, because if companies like mine can have this much of a benefit from it, like, oh my God, like there are much bigger companies that are going to save a lot more money and
oh yeah,
improve their efficiency through the roof.
yeah,
So yeah, I agree with you. And then even that the Sphinx chat. Or is that what it's
Yeah, and
called?
Breeze just integrated podcasting, using the Keysend thing, the podcasting 2.0 stuff that
Oh, really?
Curry is doing. So Sphinx and Breeze are now doing the exact same thing, where you could just pay directly to a podcast if they have a Keysend address put on their RSS feed. And I've been really beating around the bush because I've been looking for a good way to host it, and I think I might actually just be able to host it on my Mega server.
Mm-hmm.
Which is Kim.com's stupid thing. But it's actually a pretty good service. The storage is
Yeah.
dirt cheap. I use it just as like kind of a cloud storage thing. And I actually think I can host the files from Mega, and run my own RSS feed for Sphinx, and maybe for Breeze. I don't know if I can punch it in manually, but I was trying to have it so that I can have an ad-free version of the feed for
Mm-hmm.
anybody who's streaming sats, like, because
Mm-hmm.
they're paying me for the content. Like, why do I, so they don't have to skip the ads or listen to them, like get a 1 minute interruption in the middle of the show,
Mm-hmm.
um but
All
it's
they have
just
to do is come to a podcast like mine that's so small that doesn't have ads yet.
yeah. But I've been slowly changing my workflow to make it so I can easily repost all the audio clips without the ads and stuff, and like easily move things in and out. And I did that about 40 episodes back, and slowly been building up a backlog so that when I get the new RSS feed, it'll actually work. But been a big influx of people on Sphinx, and now with Breeze dropping, it'll probably be the time to really turn around and look at that again.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to check that out. Because I was listening to them talk about it, Marty Bent talk about it. And I'm like, it's one of those things, just another eye opening, like, oh my God, here we go. This is gonna explode.
Paul is the most. I had a conversation with him like 6 months ago, right when he was just rolling out Sphinx or whatever, and I wanted him to come on the show, and he's like, no, it's too early. It's too early. Like, I don't want to be promising or telling people about all these big visions and then not be able to deliver it. Like, let's wait. But we just ended up. We had intended to just make like a 5 or 10 minute call so he could talk me through a couple of things. And we ended up talking like 2.5 hours on this call. And it was just the most bullish thing. I was just like, oh my God, this is insane. And it was just crazy bullish after that conversation. I was like, this is going to be huge. Like,
you just go out and
so
start
about this.
selling your furniture again. And
basically I was like, chairs. I have too many chairs.
Yeah, I got to sell everything. I got to get out of here. You look at your dogs. You're like, I love you, but come on. So how did you get into Bitcoin Audible and everything? I mean, walk people through, explain that. You can explain it better than I can, but you're reading a bunch of Bitcoin work. You have to have the voice for it and everything, so that works. But yeah, how did you start that?
I never thought of myself as like, oh, my voice is great for that or anything. I did have the guy. We had a very serious. I can't call him a DJ because that seems too degrading to what he does. But the guy that we hired for our wedding, both my wife and myself had worked in weddings for years prior to us getting married, so we knew all the tricks.
Yeah.
And all the people to contact. And one of the guys that we contacted for our entertainment was a guy who literally made a science about getting a crowd riled up and making a good time. Like, he designed his playlists and the music that was played based on making sure that like which generation was going to get up and dance and was going to know all the words to the songs, and when to give the older generations a break so that they can sit down for a little bit and then amp them back up again for like a couple of rounds, and then how to get everybody standing on their feet. And I mean, he had literally broken this down to like a social science of like, how do people have fun? And we, good God, after meeting this guy, I mean, we nerded out for like hours and hours in his little office about like all sorts of different stuff on this. This is the most fascinating topic to me. he randomly, while we were chatting, he says, you got a really good radio voice, because he'd been doing radio for ages as well. And they had like a little station or something that they worked out of, and they had a couple of shows. And I was like, really? That was the first time I had ever heard that. It never even crossed my mind. And that was kind of sitting in the back of my mind. And then after getting into Bitcoin for years, I just hated that I felt like I wasn't contributing. I was just this passive lurker here, posting some bullshit on Reddit every once in a while, and making some posts and trying to answer questions. As a technician at the time, I was driving around everywhere. I mean, I drove 4 hours a day in a big work van, fixing stuff on poles and internet devices and all sorts of stuff. And I got hours and hours and hours of podcasts, and there were these really great pieces that I wanted to read, and I even listened to some of those awful, like, let the robot read it for you thing.
Oh yeah.
Didn't like it, but I did it just so that I could consume a lot of the content. And literally I just had this in the back of my mind. It's like, damn it, I wish somebody would just read it out loud. Like, I just had Audible for all of these stupid things. My brother and I had tried to start a podcast. There are two completely different shows that each have like 4 or 5 episodes each that are just dead and lost on a hard drive somewhere that were just never published. And we did that for years and just kept procrastinating, or not being happy with it, or not being confident enough to actually publish it. It's like, oh, we sound stupid. We have no idea what we're talking about, imposter syndrome sort of stuff. And then one day I was just fed up with it all. We've been talking about having a podcast for 3 years and nothing ever came of it. And one day I was just like, fuck it. And I sat down, and the idea of just reading the articles just seemed like the easiest way to just force myself to do something where I didn't even have to feel all that confident about it. Like, I didn't have to be all that insecure about it. Like, it was somebody else's article that I just thought was really great that other people should hear. And sat down holding up my iPhone in front of me and sitting with my iPad to read an article. And I just read it on the thing and then published it one day, and it got like 12 listens or something like that. And I was like, hey, 12 people listened to this article.
That's amazing.
And then I did it again the next day, and did it again after about 10 episodes. I was like 20, 30 downloads or something like that. And I was like, all right, no, I'll switch it over to a real mic. I'll sit in front of my computer and get some sort of a setup with it. And I started doing it there, and then I'd be like, 50 downloads. Holy shit.
Yeah.
People, I don't even know. Do I know 50 people?
Yeah.
Like,
you're like, okay, this isn't just my mom. This is
and then, a year later, it's in the hundreds. And I go to one of the Bitcoin meetups in Raleigh, and a friend of mine who I had known from Wilmington, from the East Coast, I bumped into him, and we were just all talking at the Bitcoin meetup, and Steve Jeffress, and I just mentioned, just like, yeah, I'm actually doing a podcast now, because I hadn't talked to the guy in like 2 years or something. Like, there's been this huge gap, and I was like, dude, what's up? I hadn't seen you in forever, right? And I was like, yeah, I got a podcast, actually. It's about Bitcoin. I've been totally consumed. And he was like, really? And I was like, yeah, it's the crypto economy is what it was at the time. And he was like, what? I listened to your show. And I was like, are you shitting me? And he was like, yeah, dude, I love your show. That's great. Like, I can get all these articles and stuff. I was like, really? No shit. And he was just like kind of flabbergasted for like a good 30 minutes. Like, I can't believe that you do that show. Like I know you, like, and from there, I was just kind of like, wow, somebody's like really getting value out of this. That was the first person I'd ever seen in real life and spoken to that had listened to the show. And he seemed to really enjoy it. And like, we'd always chatted, and I like Steve, he's a good buddy. And so then I just started ramping it up again. And 3 years later, I don't know, it's pretty big. It's a pretty big show. I love it. I can't stop doing it.
Yeah.
I did it for 2 years without making 1 cent on it. Just because there's nothing else to do. That's just what I wanted to do with my time. Like, I'm gonna waste all day on Bitcoin one way or the other. Better figure out how to make money doing it, right?
I know. that's why I started the podcast, because I was like, well, look, I need to learn everything I can about this, and what's the best way to do it. I mean, I'd basically spend a year listening, a year plus listening to all you guys, and I was like, all right, I need to start having conversations with these people, and and honestly, like my thought was like, I could just call these people, and have these conversations on the side, and like kind of like you, I was like, well, let's just record it, and if there's new people coming in, then cool, like they're gonna learn from it, like as I learn or whatever. And there was like I think I got like one comment from somebody or
Easy to
something
get
recently.
people that way too. Like if you're inviting them on a podcast, it feels different than like you got a minute for a phone call. Like a minute, like trying to get together a phone call and have a conversation seems like, God, how am I going to fit this into my schedule? Like,
Uh-huh.
like can you just text me the problem
Yeah.
you're having or the question you want answered, whereas like inviting on a podcast is like, okay, cool. This is content. This is useful. Somebody else is going to get something out of this too, like, I don't know. It's a whole lot easier to say yes to a podcast appearance than it is.
Then it is to like,
take an hour out for
we have a
random
conference call and
conversation.
we'll discuss all this stuff. A bunch of things. I have
I feel like somebody's going to sell something to me in the middle of that call at some point,
yeah, exactly.
By the way, I have a business and blah, blah, blah.
Would you like to invest your Bitcoin in, I
have a mining operation and I think it's going to be really profitable. I mean,
it's going to make
really
so much money. You have no idea. If you could just give me 10
Bitcoin.
minutes of your time, how many Bitcoin do you have? Answer, not enough. But yeah, I interviewed Jeff Booth and I told him, I said, I haven't been able to like even think, I can't fathom something that I would be able to get somebody to part with their Bitcoin in order to invest in it. It's like, it's like, well, like, I don't know, unless you have like a rocket that is going to go to Mars and it takes an hour, like now. I don't know, maybe that,
maybe
like,
that's worth it.
Maybe somebody will,
depends on how much Bitcoin.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, well, how many are we talking about? But yeah, I mean, and it is funny because it is rewarding. Like, at this point, I mean, there's like, to the dozens of people that are listening, and the one guy that left me a comment or sent me a message, whatever it was like, he was like, hey man, like I really appreciate, and I was like, cool, like that's totally cool. Like it's awesome. Like one person got something out of this.
Yeah. It makes it feel worth it. It makes it feel worth it. Like I feel like I'm repeating myself when somebody sends me a message like, dude, I really get a lot of value out of the show. Thank you so much and stuff. And like, but it makes a huge difference. You're like, damn, somebody is actually like, somebody's listening to this and hearing this argument or this idea or learning this aspect of Bitcoin for the first time. And, I'm able to explain it in the way that I think it will work, and for somebody it's working. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know, it feels like a big deal.
Yeah.
Like it's absolutely why I love doing the show, just to keep getting those comments.
And so do you end up doing stuff that is it ever like one where you're like, man, this is gonna be tough to do, and then by the time you get into it, you're like, that's all right, like it was? Or do you ever have ones where you're like, oh boy, that was a tough one, like I can't wait for this one to be over? You don't have to name names.
No, definitely that definitely happens on occasion where I love the idea of the work, and
it's nothing against the author or anything like that.
No.
Everybody has those articles. I wondered that. But I wondered that because I'm like, I love to read articles, but like if you're reading an article, when you get like halfway through it and you're like, oh, I got what I needed out of it, I can like go to another one. But if you're committing to reading the whole thing, you got to do it.
Either I got to like come up with a new idea for the episode or just trash it and do something tomorrow. Like I'll waste half a day on a article like that if I've made a mistake. But I usually I try to just kind of push back, like particularly like even yesterday's article, actually, trust that we need more of, is like there were a couple of things that, like the idea I absolutely 100% agreed with, but I wouldn't have explained it the way they did. Like, well, towards the beginning, it felt like it was to like only Bitcoiners would kind of get the 2 or 3 steps taken to get to that thought process, and like I would have had 3 or 4 paragraphs of leading to that conclusion rather than just starting from that conclusion as our basis and, you know, getting into it. But the ideas were really great. Like I very much agreed with what they were talking about. And it was just kind of like these broad strokes about the idea of trust and social fabric and how deeply tied to money it was. So like I have this issue with, do I want to do a guy's take lead in? You know, do I want to preface some of this article before I get into it? And then yesterday's, I'm not sure if you saw or whatever, but I totally did a 30-minute rant after the read, and then it just got burned. Like I completely lost all the audio because Logic Pro froze up on me and it wouldn't save. I couldn't export. I couldn't do anything. All I could do was close it out and reopen it, and I just lost it all. So I didn't even get to do a guy's take after the article, which sucks because I really wanted to. But then there are other articles where, like, I think the ideas are great, but it's poorly written. You know, particularly there's a lot of people in the Bitcoin space who write that English isn't their first language. So like either the grammar or the way certain things like sentences are formed make it awkward to read. And it sounds like even though they're like good ideas and maybe there's something very unique in it, it does sound like it was written by like a 12-year-old, somebody who's very new to English, you know?
Yeah.
So I kind of struggle with those a little bit, you know? But I still want to cover those on the show, but you know, 500 reads deep, and there's definitely been some that were complicated or were like 1/3 of it I didn't quite agree with, but I thought that middle third had some great stuff to expand on. And some I just read because it's just a topic that I love. And maybe I even don't even follow a lot of what's in the article. Not follow, that's not the word. Like that wouldn't be the perspective that I would share, but it's like somebody might get a lot out of this article, you know?
And you're offering it up,
right?
you know,
I gotta don't agree with everything that I read, right? But it might be covering a topic that I just think is cool, and so I want to talk about it today. And so that's the one I read.
And I think you saw this because you favorited liked it as well. What is your favorite Bitcoin piece to read and why?
Jesus. I liked it because I was laughing out loud. It's like asking me as like a filmmaker what my favorite movie is. That's an impossible question. 21 Lessons, thinking about it more and more, like 21 Lessons is one that I've just always loved. It's fun to read. He's got a lot of, you know, quotes and stuff about like, am I mad? It's like, yes, unfortunately, I think you are. We all bonkers, but there's a good secret. Everybody is, you know, like so I get to do voices and like have a lot of fun with it. And then also it's like little bite-sized, like really deep and thoughtful ideas about Bitcoin. And those are my favorite, right? Is just how secure is SHA-256, and then like 8 paragraphs on the insane math of SHA-256. And
how secure is it?
Impossibly so. So that one was always a great one, just because it has so many good ideas and they're all bite-sized. So I feel like people would leave that feeling entertained. It's fun to read for me, and you can't go away from it without thinking, like, without wanting to know more, you know? So that one really stuck out in my mind. For me personally, some of the things that I think are most critical to understand, and the things that I think are like allegorical, like really great tools for understanding Bitcoin, actually aren't the most popular ones on the show. I love On Shelling Points, Network Effects, and Lindy by Willem Vandenberg. It does such a good job of explaining network effects and why communication mediums tend toward one. Why it is that we only use TCP/IP. You know, like that is the foundation of the internet, and we have the internet. Not 5 that we pick which one to log into. You know? And that one has so many critical ways of thinking about it, and he doesn't even explicitly say this in the article, but he leads toward enough that like I had this kind of aha moment while I was reading his, is the reason communication protocols don't seem to benefit from that market competition. For instance, like cars, is that there's not one car, right? Like everybody can drive their own different cars. Somebody has electric and hybrid and gas and diesel. And then you've got big cars, little cars, Mack trucks, buses, like everybody just has their own thing. There's this huge market competition for what serves what purpose. But we all have the exact same rules of the road. Why don't we have competition on what a stoplight does or how many lights and colors there are on it? And that's the difference between a protocol and a product, between a communication medium and an app on top of it. And why is that? What is it that makes those fundamentally different things? And that article does such a good job of breaking it down. And what it struck me was that the protocol itself, the communication medium, is what makes the market possible in the first place. If you don't have a stable set of rules for how to interact with each other, if you don't have a communication layer, if you don't have a language with which you can speak to detail out what your product is, whether what its color is or its shape or what its use is, you can't have a market. So the reason those consolidate towards one is because they are a prerequisite to having it before you can have a competitive market. You must have the communication protocol. You must have the rules of the market. Just like you have to have the rules of the game of soccer before you can start figuring out how to play the game and see who's better at what, and who can kick the ball far and who's a great goalie, like that sort of thing. And that idea just like stuck with me. I was like, oh shit, this is so great. So I love that article. But it's not like a hugely popular one, like my interview with Preston Pish recently, or Breedlove's piece or whatever, but I constantly recommend that one out to people.
Yeah.
And then there was a great series on BitTorrent that talked about the history of BitTorrent, why it exploded so much in the early days, why it dwindled after the birth of Netflix and streaming services and stuff like that, what role it served in the transition between kind of the analog media and the digital media. And I love that one. It's a 4-part series by Simon Morris, who actually worked with BitTorrent, like he was during that whole era. And it's great. It's great. There's so many brilliant lessons that you can pull from BitTorrent and about why that technology surged as like a protest against the industry refusing to admit the new environment, admit the changes that had happened in the technology. So it arose basically as this protest mechanism against outdated infrastructure. And then once the market itself, once the industry conceded the fact that they were going to have to sell songs one at a time for 99 cents, and you're going to have to be able to download it, and you're going to have to give the consumer control, or they're just going to get it for free. Because this is just a new world we're in. If you don't please the customer with the new medium and the new devices and the freedom to take their media wherever the hell they want, they're just not going to use you. They're not going to need you in the middle at all. And so after they conceded that, the extra work it was to go to BitTorrent and download it for free wasn't worth the 99 cents.
Yeah.
Like it just didn't matter. And so it thus dwindled because it basically achieved the transition, enforcing the transition that the copyright and media giants were not wanting to do. And I also argue, because he actually alludes to the fact, does that mean that Bitcoin only works as a protest mechanism and that it eventually dwindles out? And I feel like, and I've had a number of people respond and tell me that I made a brilliant argument. Oh, brilliant. Oh God. Yeah. Just stay humble, you dumbass. That I made a good argument for why that can't actually happen with Bitcoin, and that it's far more to why TCP/IP, there was no concessions to the existence of TCP/IP that AT&T could make to keep its analog phone network alive. And it's a thought process that I thought worked out really well, and I think it's a good explanation. all
Yeah.
lack of humbleness aside.
Yeah.
I'm just a pleb here who loves Bitcoin.
Well, it's funny you bring up with the BitTorrent and everything. Because I mean, obviously, like I said earlier, I now own a streaming service, so I'm on that other end of it. But we would. This isn't my pitch for it, but we definitely, maybe you should be a part of the the advisory board or something, because I think you get a lot of what we're saying in the like Sphinx chat and all that is like kind of really speaks to paying people directly and being willing to, like you said, it's like instead of ripping it off for free, it's you're willing to spend the 99 cents.
Yeah.
I think that the hard part for the industry, and what I'd said for the longest time, was that they were and I mean, I'm made people's eyes big whenever I would say this in meetings, like at these with these film executives. But I was like, people didn't want to admit that they were like basically robbing, like they were getting away with highway robbery with
Yeah.
the prices they were charging. Like a band could charge $15 for a whole album, and you only wanted the one song. Like there's a reason they didn't sell it as singles. Occasionally if it was super popular and they could make more money off of it, they would sell the single. But they would just crank out garbage for the rest of the album, and it was terrible. So they were getting paid what they deserve, frankly. And like the way like Spotify and everything works, and
and think about the incentives there too, though, is that it realigns incentives to the art rather than
to the profits,
twisted way that they're going to sell it. They're going to sell it to us. Is that if you don't have 15 good songs, you don't sell 15 songs. You sell 2. You sell the ones that are good. Sorry, just
no. That's exactly the point I'm going towards, is that it's great for the art, because like I think, I mean, part of my reasoning for doing what we're doing is I think people like Netflix and stuff, they've sucked in these subscribers, and now they've kind of reached this level of like mediocrity, and I think there's going to be like a 5-year period where it's just like mediocre content coming out of the streaming giants have already captured the audience, because the incentive's not there to really cultivate something great, where you have something, if it's based on the quality that you're producing and it's your consistency. I think it's a better reward structure for the the truly talented, and for the ones that are willing to pay for it. If you're willing to pay, like we on like Amazon, for example, is like Spotify, they'll pay per stream, and I've told people, they say, oh, that's really unfair to pay artists. Like I think on Spotify they make like a penny every play or something like that, or maybe a little bit less. And people are like, oh, that's not fair. And I'm like, well, you know what, if you look at it, like Spotify costs what, $120 or something like that for the year. Like that's about what I was willing to spend on albums. Like I would spend 120 $150 on albums, and that money should get divided up evenly amongst the people
who you listen to.
Exactly. So to me it's a democratic and fair way to do it. But the Capitol Records and all that, they didn't like that.
Sure they don't.
I don't know why they wouldn't. But so with Swann Bitcoin, and I'll have to admit that I'm kind of naive here, I honestly thought that you owned it.
Dude, everybody does. Everybody does. You would not believe the number of people who I am part of Swann's support team, and they don't even know it. They like people just send me as like, man, I was having this trouble with Swann, signing up, like blah blah, like is this a website, like all this stuff, and I'll be like, let me direct you to Brady or Brecky or whatever. I think they can sort you out. I don't even correct people anymore. I'm the founder of Swann Bitcoin. I turned this over to Corey and let Brecky and Brady and crew. They just do my work for me.
You've got to that point where you you're the CEO that sits there. You're like the Reed Hastings that just the Jeff Bezos. You just travel around and do all the media junkets, right?
That's right.
So,
So many people. So many people.
okay, good. I'm glad I'm not the only one.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I honestly just legit thought that until yesterday. I was like, oh, I was like,
That's awesome.
he does not own it. Okay. New question. I just crossed that one off. Like, all right, going down the line. So what do you think? Um, I'm curious as to like, you're an OG, or as close to an OG. You weren't, with How Finney.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, what is what do you think the new classes are going to look like, compared to the old classes? um what I mean, like 2017 there was the Bitcoin cash fork and all that kind of
Mhm.
crazy stuff. I don't know, somebody that's lived through this multiple times. What do you see this new halving cycle churning out? And say we get to the next halving cycle, is it going to be, are we going to have dips, are we going to have, and I'm not, again, not asking for price
Sure,
predictions or
sure.
anything like
Yeah.
that. Just, you know I think I think it's going to change, but I haven't been there through the other one, so I don't have any frame of reference.
Hmm. Well, every new quote unquote generation or class of Bitcoin that comes in, I think one of the biggest things is that people forget or basically just have no context. They come in and they think Bitcoin simply is what it is and completely forget or just never grasp the concept that Bitcoin earned what it is through many, many, many battles. Like the reason we know Bitcoin is decentralized is only because we tested the hell out of it. And it is because it survived attacks. It is specifically because those attacks happened that it is decentralized. And what it is a process of extreme maturation and growth. And this is something that an analogy I like to use, particularly in comparison to like altcoins and stuff, is that Bitcoin was insanely centralized early on. It
Really?
was run by Satoshi, you know.
Yeah.
There were a handful of nodes, maybe, you know, 2 or 3 nodes, 5 nodes, 10 nodes, handful of miners. They could have easily hard forked it. Easily. And they wouldn't even have to really do anything. Satoshi would just been like, this is the new client, and everybody would have updated. They wouldn't even have thought about it.
Hmm.
And that would have been a hard fork and proof that it was heavily centralized. And it makes sense. Decentralization is a process of growth, it's not a light switch. You don't just like cut it on and like, this is decentralized. And after 12 years, like the analogy that I like to use is that people think that copy and pasting Bitcoin, even as it is today, means that you have something that is equally as decentralized and secure and robust as Bitcoin. No, you have the DNA. You have the DNA of an organism, but you don't have an organism. Like, so just like I could say, I've got a grown lumberjack who is incredibly skilled and experienced and can go out and cut down a bunch of trees and build me a freaking house because that guy's been through some shit and like he knows how to do some things. You can clone that person and put them in a womb and you've got the exact same recipe, got the exact same DNA, but that fetus is not going to be able to cut you down some trees and build your
No.
house.
Even when
And
they come of age, they still.
yeah, yeah, they've got lots and lots of learning to do, and they cannot survive that coming of age period. They could fail those tests as opposed to succeed with the exact same DNA, exact same recipe of a person. And that is what I think is deeply misunderstood. And people think that if it's a blockchain, it's decentralized, and it's just not. And so Bitcoin is where it is because it has earned its place. And I think people will and continue to take it for granted. And that there will be more attacks coming. It will have to continue to earn it. But Bitcoin's becoming an adult. It's hell, I'd say it's in its teenage years.
Mhm.
There's still plenty of tests yet to be tested. But it's got a very, very exciting future, and we've made it through the roughest patches. And with the new generations, the new classes coming in, I think they won't understand that. They'll never fully get exactly how 24 hours from just total death this thing has been in the past. And how fragile really it is, despite the fact that it has been beaten to death and is still around. And it will just become that staple that obviously it can't be killed or can't die or whatever. And to some degree, that will be a good thing. To some degree, it will be a bad thing. Anti-fragility is based on the fact the reason anti-fragility works is because of stressors, is because it's attacked. You know, when things are going well in Bitcoin, that's when I get nervous. Like if governments are banning it and people are attacking the network and the Tor network is being blasted and 20% of the nodes offline, that is when I'm like, okay, good. Okay, good. This is the way Bitcoin's supposed to be, right? You're like, this is comfortable. This is when Bitcoin grows and gets stronger.
You're born in the chaos. You're like,
when everything's going great and people are just investing in it, and you know, governments are like, oh, Bitcoin should be friendly. We should be friendly to Bitcoin and stuff. That's when I get nervous. Like, man, I'm waiting for something to go wrong. Somebody break something, please. Last year has been
terrible for you.
Somebody break something, please. But yeah. And they'll forget just how it's so easy now. It's so easy now. Like there's nothing like my level of worry, like you can't even compare it to what it felt like in 2012 or something like that. You know, everything was just like, is this it? Is this it?
Yeah.
Is this crazy? Is it gone this time?
Oh my god, it's
my dream is all gone. So
yeah, you're my electrical bill, it's gone forever. Well, you know, I wonder if I mean I hope that people can have that perspective, because that's something that I'm trying to like go down. Like I almost want to be like, don't forget where it came from, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like what was that fork had to have been terrifying whenever, you know, Roger Ver, who's Bitcoin Jesus, whatever, you know, just says, hey, we're going to go in a different direction. And there were people that were willing to follow him. And like, was that actually terrifying, or was it like everybody was like, like you're a moron?
It was a little bit terrifying and exciting. Like honestly, the block size debate, excuse me, the block size debate had been going on for 3 years, 4 years maybe at that point. And you know, obviously started out really slow, but it got crazy late 2015 and 2016. And then obviously just at each other's throats, like you were just waiting for somebody to get murdered, and they're like, you're the bad guy, you know. Like it got real heated then. So actually the fork itself, the price had gone nuts right when the fork happened. But you know, the UASF happened up to that. So just kind of as a general overview of what happened is basically the quote unquote big blocker crew, after trying to run like 4 or 5 different clients, like Bitcoin Classic, Bitcoin Unlimited, Bitcoin 2x. I mean, there were just so many. Then they would spike and they'd have 1,000 nodes or 2,000 nodes, and then they'd crash. Nodes would go offline because like people were running them on like AWS to make it look like there was a lot more support. And people were constantly posting charts. See, Bitcoin Classic is going to be it. This is the one that's going to win. Bitcoin Unlimited is going to fix everything. We're going to have unlimited 10% increases in block sizes forever. And all this different stuff. And then the conversation really, and I still feel like the history of it is told very dishonestly from the block size people, is that they literally just say that the argument about was whether or not 1 megabyte is like the perfect block size or whether we should have a bigger block size. And that is not, that was the disagreement, was that it had nothing to do with what the arbitrary size of the block was. It was about breaking consensus and what the security trade-offs of that are. And is block size really relevant at all in the scaling context? Like if you have a 1 data point cost for every 1 point increase in scaling, you're not scaling. You're just not. In fact, it's worse than that. For every unit of scale, every unit of transaction that you add to the system at the base layer, you have multiples of that in data cost. Like your marginal return for extra data is less and less and less. You're anti-scaling at the block size layer. It's just horrible engineering. It's just bad. And I didn't understand it at first. Bitcoin Unlimited sound like a great idea to me. Like I'm just thinking, keep up with Moore's law, just so that things don't get too far. But after like really digging into it, it was because of that huge heated debate that everybody had to learn. Everybody had to figure it out for themselves and make the decision. And then leading up to that, a bunch of the major corporations and exchanges, Coinbase, Bitmain, 80%, more than 80% of the miners signed on to this thing, the New York Agreement, as it was referred to. And literally in no uncertain terms, they were basically like, we're going to go to SegWit 2x. We're going to do a block size increase, and we're going to do SegWit, and we're going to destroy the minority chain. The Bitcoin is not going to survive. There's going to be one chain. And even Roger Ver was saying, like he said in like a post on Reddit that I just was like, you gotta be kidding me. Was that we're going to destroy the Bitcoin, because basically like when that was going on, like the core devs and like a lot of the Bitcoin community was like, okay, fine, just fork off. Like
fork
put in
off in the
play
corner.
protection. We're just not going to go with you. Like at that point, it's like, great. You want to try out your shit? Do it. But they insisted that we were not going to have our chain, that we're going to destroy yours. This was not going to be a fork. You were going to come with us, period. And Roger Ver even said in a like a Reddit post and like a conversation that no, we're going to destroy their chain so that they have to come work on ours. And it's like, nah, dude, those people are just going to leave. Because Bitcoin will have failed if a bunch of corporations and some miners get to take it over and decide what it is. And that's when we were like, this is stupid. Like, this is like earmarking a hard fork on the back of the protocol upgrade that we're trying to do. And we were like, we're going to call their bluff. User activated soft fork. Fuck it. Like, go fork off. Do it. Do what you want. I don't give a shit. Like, test me. Like, we're going to run all this shit on our nodes, and you can do whatever the hell you want. And they said, oh, we're going to do block attacks. And they even like openly discussed how they could make it so that quote unquote minority Bitcoin wouldn't have any blocks, would have nothing but empty blocks, and they could still mine with the majority on their chain because they're assuming that 80% of the miners are going to go along with this. I mean, there was open discussions of attacks and how they were going to cause all sorts of trouble with replay attacks and stuff on the chain. And then when it finally turned into a Bitcoin Cash hard fork, when user activated soft fork finally won, they abandoned everything because they were like, shit, we do not have the support for this. And their network is going to reject our blocks and our transactions. And the futures market, that was a really big indication too, because SegWit 2x was priced in the futures market at like a fifth or like a sixth of the normal Bitcoin price. And that was not at all what they had expected, I don't think. And so the market was basically proving that this was not going to turn out like they thought. And user activated soft fork got big. We got the hats, we got the hashtags. I mean, we just went all out with it, and I was running 2 of those suckers. And then when it finally came to it, they just abandoned it like a week out from when the fork was supposed to happen. And it was absolutely because of user activated soft fork. It was because of everything that happened. And we openly talked about the game theory. It's like, no, we actually don't have to do anything. All we have to do is wait for them, because we can work with empty blocks. We can work with 10%, 20% of the hash power and just wait. We don't have the cost. Nodes don't have the cost, right? We can just sit around and say, if you want us to be part of your economy, if you want us to be able to withdraw from your service, we're not going to buy your Bitcoin shit, like whatever your fork is. So if you want to work with Bitcoin, we have no cost. You're going to burn as much mining power on your fork as you possibly want to, but we're not buying it. And so all we had to do is sit around and wait. And we openly talked about all the game theories. Like, no, all we have to do is wait. All we have to do is wait. This is a game of chicken, and our side of this is free. Theirs is very costly. And lo and behold, it worked. Thank God, because it would have worked anyway. Bitcoin, quote unquote, the original Bitcoin, actual Bitcoin would have survived because they couldn't even change 2 lines of code without fucking it up. SegWit 2x had a off by 1 bug, as it's referred to. And even the small minority that tried to go ahead with the fork, that all these Coinbase and Bitmain, all these huge companies in Bitcoin who just thought they were Bitcoin, right? We represent you. We are your leaders. And that was the whole air of everything that they talked about, is that we are deciding for Bitcoin. And that pissed me off. Bullshit, you are not Bitcoin. That's why people call Coinbase an enemy of Bitcoin to this day. And I do not correct anybody when they say such. But they broke it. They couldn't even make SegWit 2x work. They never produced a single block. It completely ground to a halt right out the gate. And
we're back to Bitcoin.
And they died, and they had to go right back to Bitcoin.
That's amazing.
So then, like a month later, is when the Bitcoin Cash hard fork happened. And at that point, it was just like the price went crazy. Bitcoin crashed. Bitcoin Cash went up. I think it peaked at like half of the price of Bitcoin or something like that. Like, it was really chaotic at that time. And it happened on like Halloween, I think, or at least a weekend around it, because I was up for, I was staying in the living room, like with my wife. We were like crashing on the floor with like some friends out of town. And I remember, because it was like 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning when everything unfolded, and I was just like scared and excited and all this stuff. And I literally went on Reddit or something and made this big post about like, congratulations, like I'm actually happy that we can just kind of, rather than be this like, oh, I'm going to destroy you or you're going to destroy me, like just go off and try your shit. Like, I don't really care that Bitcoin Cash exists. In fact, I like it because it proves Bitcoin's value proposition. It proves which way of thinking about it was in fact the proper way of thinking about it. If we believe that the market has any useful knowledge in it at all, then the market has chosen Bitcoin. And so it was good to me. Like it was scary. And I was up until 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning, just watching and reading. And like, I couldn't go to sleep, like I was nervous. And I even remember having a conversation with my wife, like, we're probably going to have like an awful bear market for a while. Like, this is going to be really messy. I think it'll take a long time to kind of clear out all the smoke. But, if you're okay with this, like, we just hold through and, buy what we can or whatever. And she was like, all right, we'll just be frugal, and it turned out much more short-lived than I thought. Even though it was still kind of vitriolic and at each other's throat, I'd rather we just try it separate. Like, just fork off and do your shit. Like, just
go fork off and
go away. Yeah.
It's so funny because the best meme I've seen is Roger Ver. It's him, like, that look on it, that image that goes everywhere whenever he was reading from the whatever was pre-written for him at Mount Gox. And then like on the other side, it was the guy from Pawn Stars, and it said like, best I can do is $100.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh
god,
man.
that was
like,
so funny.
It's weird. Like, I feel like there's people like that, and it's like it's almost like they serve a purpose of like,
oh no, yeah, it's
they
part
like
of Bitcoin earning its place.
but
Very
they
big part.
but they were also ultimately, in retrospect, never going to be the people that were there at the end. Because like if
Yeah.
you look at like documentaries and stuff and like anything like Roger Ver's talking about, he was so hyper focused on the payment and banking the unbanked, um, that it was like, okay, it was great that enthusiasm drove Bitcoin, but he just like from the beginning was never going to be there till the end because
Yeah.
that was not his mission.
Yeah.
And
And
I
when
mean,
you
what
think about it from an engineering standpoint and like how the protocol has to build out, you like even how Finney like got it right out the gate, right out the gate. He was like, oh, well, this is never actually going to scale for like just normal payments. It just can't. Like it's a broadcast layer network. You have to have a unicast layer. And that's where he made the case for Bitcoin banks, basically, is that you would go back to basically like a gold standard, a sound monetary standard, and you'd have some sort of institution that was either in the middle or some sort of higher layer, a lighter weight layer built on top of Bitcoin. Obviously, there was no explicit plan for something like that. Satoshi talked about payment channels, but they were not efficient, that you couldn't chain them together like on Lightning. Is very, very, very different mechanism at the time. But he proposed that, this might be the way to solve that. But they knew the engineering trade-off. Why this thing was actually decentralized and secure was because everybody was a full part of the system. Every node was a full Bitcoin. It was the Bitcoin system on every single computer that ran it. And that's what makes it secure. That is what gives it value. And if you give that up for payments, you've done nothing. You've thrown away your 0 to 1 discovery. You've thrown away your revolutionary aspect so that you can copy and so you can get
buy
a sad, more expensive version of Visa.
Yeah.
Like that's what you've given up. You've made shitty PayPal without any of the decentralization and real value. But Lightning Network in 2015 was, after I understood all the arguments, I kind of had faith that I was like, okay, this protocol is going to have to be built out in layers, and it's just natural. And I started really seeing the comparison to the internet. Like if we thought everybody's going to be walking around with the internet in their pocket in the 1990s, that would have sounded absurd. But the first thing that the internet did, like going back to the strike example and what Neidig and them are doing, is that the first thing the internet did was make analog phones better, right? Is that it got rid of long distance calls or long distance fees. It got rid of that hiss when you called outside of the country because, you were only analog to your local node. Then it went digital, dropped on the internet, went across the Atlantic Ocean, came back up, and it was analog for the last mile. So rather than this awful analog connection to connection to connection to connection, and then this hello, I'm in Italy, hello, like suddenly it was just better. And I think that's the first thing that's going to happen with Bitcoin. It took 20 years, damn near 30 years, really. But at least 20 years for the internet for the development to really get there, to reach the end user easily, quickly, instantly. And I think we will probably see something similar in Bitcoin. Is that the first thing it will do is fix fiat. It will make our shitty government currencies and shitty banking system work better before we actually get all the way out to the end user. It will have to start from the infrastructure. Bitcoin is Linux, right? Like it is TCP/IP. It is the infrastructure layer of this new system. And Lightning Network, I literally think, is going to be the services layer, where just like before, if you wanted to host a service or something on AT&T phone network or whatever, you had to either make your own phone network or you had to go to the AT&T hub, right? Like it was the barrier to creating some sort of service for people was astronomical. And then suddenly with the internet, I can just make up a website. I can just design my own website. I can just boot it up and I can service 5 customers anywhere. Like I don't have to need something that can only have a national rollout. I can test it on my next door neighbor and be like, can you log into this website and see if my service works? And suddenly all the innovation moves from the center to the edge. It moves to all the end users because you have this huge open network that anybody can just create something at the edge and anybody within it can connect to. That's the Lightning Network. Anybody can create a financial service. Anybody can create a non-custodial financial service, a betting system, a payment system, a BTC Pay server, like accept payments. I can run right now a BTC Pay server. I can host, or I am hosting. I can install LN bits on it, which I actually intend to. And I have individual user logins that I can create. And for everybody in my family and my friends and stuff, I can have them use my BTC Pay server to accept Bitcoin and Lightning payments on their stores, on their websites. I can host a little service, a little payment service. It's not even that hard. Like I have a separate login for my wife just so that when she starts working with the business, she can use it. And like I can do that and everybody can have their own little wallet that's completely separate. And that's revolutionary. Like I could run a payment service. A payment service? Are you kidding me?
So you can create your own Visa
license. Like literally, I'm creating my own tiny little website running Visa, and because it's an open permissionless network, I can just do that. I can just turn it on. And I'm not going to sell it publicly, but if my father-in-law wants a wallet, just run him a wallet, right?
Yeah.
So because of that, I think we're going to see the web version of this, where you no longer have to have these psychotic regulations, these insane licenses and all this stuff. And we're going to have the exact same issues we have with copyright. Like we're going to have this huge battle, just like BitTorrent and posting some video on a website that they didn't quote unquote own, and what's fair use and Creative Commons and what's not. I think we're going to have this same fight with finance because any 14-year-old in their garage and a computer can now make a Visa competitor. And we're going to see these novel applications blow up, and it's going to happen in the services. Like what Strike is doing is groundbreaking, and it's just because they have this open network to build on, just like they had, just like somebody in the 90s had the ability to create a website and some new social media thing, and then people could log into. It's semi-centralized on a decentralized network. And then you go another 10 years and you expand those devices more, and you go to the next layer and you find another multi-sig Lightning setup, or where everybody's got their own little house multi-sig blockchain or channel factory on a router. Again, keep spreading it out and go further and further and further to the edge until you've scaled and everybody in the world can use it.
And then owning one Bitcoin at that point will be mind-blowing.
Absurd. Yeah, it'll be ridiculous. I think in the context of buying power, anything prior to $5 million a coin in today's money is a deal. I think, and again, all Bitcoin has to do is survive, but it is the internet of money. It absolutely is, in my mind. It's going to be a financial system that works better, has real prices, and can do tens of thousands of novel things that the legacy system just couldn't even dream of pulling off. And the first thing it's going to do is it's going to fix the legacy system, and then it's going to just absorb it and take what it can and toss out the rest, and then build out its own infrastructure and its own base. And everybody's going to have to admit it. They're going to have to concede or die.
I completely agree. I've been, saying that you can't fight innovation like this.
Yeah. There's no company in the world that can fight every 14-year-old with a Lightning library or, RPC. Like there's just nobody. It's nothing.
Like the Lightning Network, it will destroy Visa. It's just a matter of time. It's not a matter of if, but when. And in all of those guys, like you said, if Western Union doesn't have a Bitcoin plan, then they're in serious trouble.
Yep.
Because why does it cost so much money to do all that stuff? Whenever, like you said, a 14-year-old could just set something up, and oh man, that has me so excited for like what the future of Bitcoin is, because that's where I like to live. That's where like I start to have fun with it. And I'm like, oh, what's this gonna be? Where are we going? Wow. That just made me, I'm gonna go buy another one. My wife's in the kitchen and can hear me say this, so she's probably like, oh no, we're gonna buy a house,
damn
aren't
it.
we? Why are we what did this guy do? Why did he make him more bullish? But
And it's funny, like with Lightning Network in particular, is that I'm a pretty technical person, but I usually keep my like command line stuff and like my Linux stuff to specifically the projects I want to do. And then I also want the side that cuts out all the fat, gets rid of the unnecessary stupid steps, and makes things easy. And with that said, I wouldn't use Lightning every day if it doesn't just work. You know, like it would only be when I wanted to play with a project or boot up another Raspberry Pi and tinker with some crap and break out the command line and be like, Lightning UTXO invoice, you know, like it would just be a geeky project for me. But I don't. I use Lightning every single day, and it does still take what I would consider a little bit of technical knowledge, probably in the same way that like really knowing and getting your footing around on the internet in 2000, you know, required somebody who knew their way around a computer.
Yeah.
But it works. It worked. I mean, this morning I did 2 fold cards from my BTC Pay server. Well, one from my Breeze, one from my BTC Pay. And for our morning coffee and breakfast. Yesterday, I paid my brother back for something with the Breeze wallet. Day before, I paid the guy who does my work on my website and like formatting stuff. And in fact, I'm probably going to be paying him today because he's done like a couple of little headliner videos. Just recently paid a guy to do my BTC Pay server like formatting so it looks like Bitcoin Audible, because I just didn't have to fight. I didn't want to fight with a bunch of CSS. God, I hate that stuff so much. So I just paid him, you know, 250,000 sats or something to do that. I think I still owe him a little bit to finish it out. But I mean, like every day, and then I'm all through that whole time, I'm getting invoices of people donating to me on the same server. I've gotten 20,000 sats in the last 2 days for people listening to me on Sphinx. They're streaming money to me. And I mean, just like I've moved around between 3 or 4 wallets. I do every day. I wouldn't use it if it didn't just work, and it just works. And it's, like I said, it's not still, I don't think it's end user normally level yet, just like the internet in 1999 or 2000, but it's going to be. It just is, you know, like if I could look in 2015 and say the Lightning Network was actually going to work when it was still an idea, and I could see how the economics would play out and how the engineering could play out, and you could actually sort out those major issues that it has, I don't see how the hurdles that it has left to really become a 7 billion person protocol, I think are less than the hurdles it has already tackled. You know, it is just a map, and there's more eyes on it. There's more code running. There's more people adopting it, and there's a much more robust. And now there is a market that is defining what the time cost of Lightning liquidity is. And that is huge. The fact that we've turned it into an economic, a market with a price for what the time cost and desire to have Bitcoin liquidity is, and that it fluctuates with the price of Bitcoin fees on the base layer and the amount of data you need to settle it. This just, as soon as you have the market deciding what the price of it is, you have a mechanism that will adjust and will build out that liquidity more efficiently than anything you could possibly imagine. That is what the market does. And so all of my reservations and hesitancies toward whether or not Lightning could work, I feel like in the same way that my confidence in Bitcoin couldn't be higher than it is right now, I'm reaching that point. I'm reaching that point with Lightning. Yeah.
And Do you still have a little bit of time? Because I have a ton of questions about that. Are you rushed?
I really have nowhere to be. I'm just going to be reading when I'm done, when I'm done here.
Yeah.
So yeah, let's keep going.
So, all right. So I'm gonna go with the explain it to me like I'm five level with that, because that, I mean, it's like I get the concept of, so with Lightning, you're talking about the fee, like the cost of, how long it takes to settle a block or whatever. Like whenever if you want to send Bitcoin to somebody, and you're like, oh, it doesn't need to be there like immediately, so whatever, like, lowest fee. Whereas if it's an urgent payment, is that what you're talking about, where like Bitcoin does that on the blockchain, but Lightning is showing how they can transfer it seamlessly and
Mhm.
instantly?
Basically, so Lightning Pool. You know what that is?
No, no.
Okay, Lightning Pool was created by Lightning Labs, and it is a non-custodial. Uh, best thing you can call it. It's DeFi on Bitcoin on Lightning, and what it does is it creates a blind bidding war for liquidity on Lightning. So it has so let's say I've got a store, right? And let's say I launch a new product, and I think I'm going to sell 1,000 of these products, of this product. And so I'm like, oh crap, I might need $100,000 worth of liquidity to sell this.
Mm-hmm.
And so what I do is I offer up 1%. I join in the Lightning Pool, and I say I need $100,000 worth of channel liquidity, and I'll offer 1% for holding this here for 3 weeks or a month or something like that. And then somebody else on the other side is offering up liquidity, and if they match with 1%, or with their minimum being 1% or whatever, we will be matched, and they will automatically open a channel with me to fulfill all of that potential liquidity. Anybody who is bidding for putting Bitcoin up,
Mm-hmm.
and will match my order. And it is done through Lightning Labs, through the Lightning Pool company. And it is a non-custodial service. It's actually written a lot like a Lightning contract, in the fact that everybody's running the same software, so they can verify that Lightning Labs is properly running their code, their marketplace. And both Lightning Labs and you, as the user running your side of the client, came to the same answer as to what the end result of all that code was. And then that's attached to just a hash on a 2 of 2 multisig. So basically, you put your Bitcoin, you lift it up out of the chain into a 2 of 2 multisig that says, if everything goes right and my code checks out and it gives the same answer as Lightning Labs market, then I match with the buyer, and we close this out and turn it into a Lightning channel, and everything's great. If we don't get the same answer, if I get a red flag or something's up, well, then I just wait, and in 48 hours, all of my money comes back to me. All I have to do is not sign. So it's like Lightning Network, right? You have an insurance contract. If something goes wrong, you just have a time delay, and you just get your money back. And same thing with this Lightning Pool setup. And by doing that, Lightning Labs can run any arbitrary code they want. There's no so ERC20 tokens, smart contract, blah, blah, crypto kitties, doesn't matter. It's completely arbitrary. It's just a hash. So basically, Bitcoin is now completely programmatically agnostic. You can run any code base, Go, Python, blah, blah. It doesn't matter. Any marketplace that you can code, and you can attach it to a Bitcoin hash, and you can run it in this. It's referred to as a shadow chain. So Lightning Pool is creating a market for what the cost of having liquidity on the Lightning Network is. And when there is a market price, that is when you can build out, when you know what the demand for something is, and you can give it a market price. The one thing I am waiting for now that I think is going to have one of the biggest effects on this new market that has been built out, and is going to be possibly one of the healthiest things to happen in Bitcoin for the fee market is Bitcoin fee futures, where miners, and that's the thing, is that miners basically have to sell these contracts. What they would do is they would sell future block space with a thing that says, if you buy all 1.8 megabytes of this block today, I can get you a guaranteed 50 Satoshis per byte fee. And so they sell this on the futures market, and then that is bid up and down on the price for a future fee. And then that miner basically gets a guaranteed return, and they can bid it for what return they need to have in fees. And then that will go up and down based on potential demand. And you'll actually be able to predict 5 blocks out what the fee's going to be now. Like that gives you, right now, it's open air, right? It's just a guess. Everybody's just crazy on the stockroom floor bidding and throwing up like $15, you know, like everybody's just, it's a chaotic global town square where everybody's just screaming as loud as they can to get their blocks in. I mean, get their transaction in a block. When that develops a fee market and a futures contract market, which I think is critical, then we'll be able to actually know what the potential future fees are, and we know ahead of time what the future demand will be, because people will be buying demand ahead of time, right? They'll be buying block space tomorrow, and in doing so, they might not even use it all up. So then they can resell that on the market on the day of to get a quicker return. They'll buy extra block space that they need because maybe, again, Apple's going to sell a new product, and they want to make sure they have a lot of block space to close and open a bunch of Lightning channels to make sure their payment system is always liquid. Let's say they don't sell as many on the first day as they thought, or they sell more. Well, then they either bid up the next futures contract as quick as possible to open up to get new liquidity, and they pay a higher fee to the providers, or they have excess block space. You know, they bought half a day's worth of blocks because they just exploding the Lightning network for the day. They only use up, 75% of what they bought, and then they bid the rest on the open market, and the fees fluctuate accordingly. Yeah. I mean, it just, I think markets.
Yeah.
Market prices are where all of these problems will be solved.
Yeah. Yeah. Markets always determine what the actual value is. So so if you want to use it, like I could take my Bitcoin and put them up, not like I could still custody them, right? And put them up there for liquidity. That's
what I'm intending to do in Lightning Pool. I haven't installed it on my BTC Pay server yet. But it definitely, I mean, I've had that instance up for almost a year now. And I've hardly had to change any channels, and I've got a couple of channels that have really good, I mean, I route, handful of transactions every day. And it continues to increase. And
you don't earn anything on that, right?
I mean, I do, but I charge like almost no fee. I don't really bother with, I probably make, I probably make 50 sats, 100 sats or something, it trickles in. That's something. And I could think of it more as a business, but I just need my BTC server up so that I can use it.
You just want to have the pay rail there.
Yeah. I use it for me, not for, some routing node on the network, but I kind of intend to build it out a little bit and like kind of take it more seriously. And if I do the Lightning liquidity pool, that would be exactly what I need, open a couple of really big channels with certain institutions or nodes or whatever on the network. So I kind of have like those fat routes from one side of the network to the other. Then I could make a real return. And I would actually put a pretty substantial amount of Bitcoin on it. I think it's gone long enough and just continues to work and hasn't given me any problems. I've been hacked. It's a hot wallet, and so I guess there's always that concern. But I don't know, it's just worked great. So I'm definitely at the place where I'm okay with feeling like I can put, good chunk, many thousands of dollars on it now to earn a return and hopefully get in on the Lightning liquidity pool and be serve liquidity to other new companies coming in.
Sorry, I don't know if you can hear that. I keep getting this stupid phone call.
Oh no, I haven't heard a thing.
Okay, good. I've
just been blabbing over here. So.
No, dude. I'm like I'm soaking this all in. I'm gonna be in your DMs and emailing you. Be like, all right, how do I set this up for myself? I want to get this going.
That's what I do.
Because that's where I'm at now. I'm like, all right, now that I have this Bitcoin, what do I want to do with it? Let's start earning some more on top of it. Let's go. It's funny though, because I'm, like before we got on, I was talking with a mortgage broker about like we're doing a construction loan and all that kind of stuff. And I was like, oh, I mean, I can show you like my Bitcoin, and he was like, I don't know. I was like, what do you mean? I was like, why don't we do that? And he's like, well, let's look at your bank statement. I was like, you're not gonna want to look at my bank statement because I don't really keep any cash in there. Yeah. Because I was like, it is a waste. And he was like, what? I was like, it's losing value if I keep it in there. I just use it as a mean to it. But now that I'm hearing about this Lightning pool, and I'm like, maybe you could just switch everything over to Bitcoin, not even use a bank. And
dude, okay. So I'm getting to the point, outside of the fact that I still have to direct deposit and then somehow get into Bitcoin with some services and like a lot of my ads like Bitbox and because I work with BTC Incorporated with Bitcoin Magazine guys.
Mm-hmm.
So my sponsors still pay me in. We're going to talk about it, and I know everybody wants to go full Bitcoin, but it's still all through fiat right now. But outside of that, with Pay with Moon now, it lets you just create a Visa card on the fly, and fund it with Lightning. And then with Fold, which I use religiously,
I'm like 30,000 on the list. I can't.
Literally, I technically don't need a bank account. Like it would be a bit of a headache not to have one, but I could probably get around it. I could live entirely off of it. Pay with Moon makes a big difference. The fact that I can now just get a Visa card on the fly. Like I could probably work it all out. Probably my biggest problem would be paying my mortgage. But I might be able to figure something out. I don't know, but I intend to. Just like you said, my bank thinks I'm shit broke. I mean, like, if I was in the dating scene and I thought the teller was cute, she would never date me. She they would think I was just absolutely pathetic. I'm like, I got $50 in the account. It's like, can I still buy $25 worth of Bitcoin and not get overdrafted this week? I just keep as little as possible in that account, whatever is not needed.
It's amazing. Like I don't even and I'm not going to get into specifics because I hate when people do that. And then it sounds like you're trying to brag or whatever. But like, I thought I was going to get shut down from my bank. Like the amount that I had transferred in one day was like,
oh yeah,
it was so bad. It had barely cleared into my bank account and was like active, and it was gone. And I was like, I was just sitting there. I was every time I got a phone call, and I was like, oh, is that the bank? They're gonna shut this down. It's over. Like they're not gonna let me do this.
So this guy's a drug dealer.
Yeah,
and I think he works for the Mexican cartels.
It is like, it's so funny because, and then like, it's funny how you can be like careless with like random stuff, but like I had this huge check for my company, so it's not like my personal one, and I had to go to an ATM to deposit it. Like that was like, I had to do it that day, and the only place I could go to was a Chase ATM. That was the closest I could get to one. Just happened to like work out that way. I got out of the car and I dropped the check on the parking lot, like on the floor on the parking lot, and I'm like chasing it, like the wind's blowing it. I'm like, oh my god, oh my god, oh my god. And I was like, this would have never happened if Bitcoin was involved. I could have just done it securely. I would have never had to go to this ATM.
Ask somebody, or somebody's like, why are you doing such a big transaction? It's like, son, Screw
Well,
you.
now,
You need to do with anything.
yeah, why do you need to know? And now I'm to the point like I said before, I've invested some, then I cashed out my 401k when I learned, like, I was listening to Preston Pish explain the quantitative easing, which was something that I think to the average person, like 99% of the Americans do not know that that's happening. And when that kicked off, I was like, oh my God, cashed in 401k, retirement, everything. It was all gone, and put everything into Bitcoin. And now I'm like talking to like my partners with my different companies, like, hey, I think we should, like convert all of our money over to Bitcoin. And they're like, that's a much harder sell than it was with my wife. My wife was like, yeah, cool, let's do this.
Yeah, let's do it.
These business partners,
I'm on board.
they're like, so what now? They're like, you want our cash reserves to fluctuate on a daily basis, like violently? And I'm like, trust me, it's the best way. Yeah, but we're not like Michael Saylor, so they're like, we're a little bit tighter, I guess. They're like, whoa, whoa, whoa. Anyways, so one other thing I wanted to ask you about was the Weimar Republic,
Okay.
because I think I heard you and Preston talking about it in your story about the guy whose life savings came to him in the mail. The bank had closed him out,
Yep.
and he had 150 grand worth of money basically in US dollars. And
Yeah, it was something like that. I can't remember exact amounts, but it was in upwards of closer to 100,000 marks or something like that. It was on the higher side of 50, 60 or 70 like that. And it was like twice that in quote unquote US dollars at the time that I read the story, which is probably even less. So probably it's now like $250,000 because the dollar isn't worth what it was when I read the story.
Which was like a year ago.
Yeah.
But that was what they mailed him his money.
Yeah. So like during the height of the hyperinflation and the crisis that was going on, or I guess prior to it, when the banks started putting restrictions on everything and not letting people access their money, and capital controls went in full force and all of this stuff, he had his life savings, right? Like he had a huge amount of money that had been everything that he'd put together over his life. That was it, quote unquote, crystallized, right? That was what he's going to retire on. And after all was said and done, when the banks finally were like, okay, you're free to get your stuff out now, they sent him a full check for all of his marks, all of his Weimar dollars, and full check for his life savings. And the stamp on the envelope cost more than what the entire check was worth after it was all said and done.
That blew my mind. That was like, if I was drinking coffee at the time, that would have been a like spit the coffee out. Like it would have been a spit take for sure. Because I was just like, I was like, what? But I've been like really, really worried that I've been telling everybody, I'm like, I think we're about to hit some like major hyperinflation. And do you see any parallels, like, from what happened in Weimar to what's happening now? I mean, this is nationwide or worldwide, so it's a little different in that perspective. But like, you can't just print money and not have consequences.
Yeah. I think the benefit, like what's actually saved them from steep inflation right now, the fact that it's only happened in equities and corporate bonds and all of this, that it's been isolated to basically financial instruments at the moment, is specifically because the velocity of money is such garbage, is because they've shut down the economy. And I said this in the interview with Preston Pish, like the lockdowns are almost necessary to prevent it. And I can't help but wonder if that's a factor. That if they need people to not be moving money around, in order to, keep the economy from imploding, keep the dollar from imploding. That's a really easy way to excuse something that's also easy to excuse because you got a virus. It's just convenient on top of convenient, right? Like, why not push it? So I can't help but think they're not a little bit connected. But regardless, it's a coincidence. But yeah, they've printed so much money. It's unbelievable. And, you know, one of the things in the book, When Money Dies, which I actually still haven't read in full because I haven't gotten my copy of it, but I've gotten so many different excerpts from it, and I know a lot of the history already. And I've read other works related to it. I read it was kind of a boring research paper, but it had like a bunch of great stuff about the Weimar Republic in those days. But one of the things that happened early on before it really, like the inflation really hit, was that everybody jumped into the financial markets. Everybody suddenly started buying and selling stocks. Your grandmother and your cousin, like it was just all over the place. Could that not be a better analogy, like a analogy for what we're doing today? Robinhood and Reddit and like all this stuff. Everybody's an investor. Everybody's a trader.
They're all making money.
And that was the big thing, is it said at the beginning of it, everybody thought they were getting rich. Everybody thought they were just making tons and tons of money. And it was kind of this like little euphoric before the storm sort of thing, that everybody just thought they were getting free money. And then it started to go downhill from there. It started to get real nasty, and suddenly it was the value of the currency and their returns didn't translate to better purchasing power. Their standard of living started to plummet. Prices went up across the board. The difference here is that the Weimar Republic didn't have a global reserve currency. And, you know, like Japan has had a very similar problem since the early 90s, really. And they've had a really awful, kind of a stagnant depressionary era that has had a couple of little blips of seeming recovery and then decline back into that. They've had a horrible economic situation, and they're like 260% debt to GDP ratio. In fact, the article I read yesterday, this is what I wanted to talk about in the Guy's Take, and I did, was the link between how much debt the country has and the levels of depression and the disconnect in their culture and the people, and the fact that people don't make friends like they used to. They've got one of the highest suicide rates. Like, people just feel helpless when you're stuck in a financial situation like that. And every decision is just, how much deeper in the hole do I want to be? You know, you've just got it. You feel like you're walking around your entire life with somebody else's hand around your throat. And that how can you feel free, or how can you feel like you're in control of yourself or your life? And that's the source of depression, right? Feeling like you have no control.
Yeah.
It's not like you're sad about anything. It's helplessness. And that has pervaded through, you know, marriage rates are at the lowest. Depression rates are at their highest, and people have become hermits in the Japanese culture. And I think it's because of their money. But oddly enough, they've never had hyperinflation. They've weaseled their way into just a gross, stagnant economy, and slowly increased poverty. The U.S. is a very unique situation. Weimar Republic was closed off. Like, it was its own economy. It's like Venezuela, right? Like, when things start going sideways for the money, it's very easy for that to hyperinflate, because nobody has to buy Venezuelan, what are it, pesos? They have pesos.
Nobody has to buy their currency.
Nobody has to buy bolivars or whatever for to buy oil, right? Like, it's just not a global reserve asset. Nobody's buying Venezuelan treasuries to hold in tens of trillions of dollars worth on some other central bank balance sheet. So it can feel the effects very, very quickly. In fact, if the U.S. wasn't the global reserve currency, I think we wouldn't have made it out of 2000. You know, certainly not the 2008 crisis. But instead, somehow the dollar has gotten more entrenched as time has gone on somehow, probably with the exception of China and how they've tried to weasel their way into, like, they've made so much infrastructure investment in, like, all throughout Africa and South America. They've actually done a pretty damn good job to remove a lot of their reliance on the dollar. I think they've kind of seen the writing on the wall better than most. They know that they've been under the thumb for a while, and then they've soaked up all of our manufacturing. You know, if China cut us off, we wouldn't have any pharmaceuticals, we wouldn't have any chips, we wouldn't have any plastic anything. You know, like it would be a disaster. Our currency has bled this country of everything it has of value, like really, really bad. I think to save America, the dollar must die, or at least be corrected in some way. Like Bitcoin is that hope. It's that light at the end of the tunnel for me. And I'm pro-American. Like I used to be a conservative, and I love the idea of freedom, even though the country has completely lost it. But the country isn't its government. Like I don't give two shits about this government. Like that's not America to me. Like it's the people, it's the culture, it's the people, and to save it, the government and the currency need to die. That it is systematically destroying this country and everything valuable inside of it. And the fact that I got to pay those bastards to keep doing that is it rubs me the wrong way.
Oh, dude, tax season right now. I was just like, God,
that's where I am right now. I've been putting that off.
But I'm a big libertarian. Like I think we would really jive on that. Like I always tell people, you ever watch Parks and Recreation?
Yes.
I always say that like my political beliefs are Ron Swanson. Like I like it. But I'm glad you said that, because I've been really struggling with that, with like, because it's like, oh, are you like anti-American? You know what I mean? But no,
no, absolutely not. You are anti-American. If you support this political institution and what they're doing, you are anti-American. You want to see America's demise, because that's what it will create. Yeah.
Like the comedian Bill Burr, I've said a bunch of times, but he said it's like buying 2 tickets for the same horse at the track.
Yeah.
Like it doesn't matter who's in. Like they're both, crooked. The thing so whenever I heard you talk about, Weimar, and I went on and I started reading some more about, like, I'd known about their hyperinflation, and the thing that made me sick to my stomach, and trigger warning for people, and like I said, I don't like any politician, so I am not pro one side or the other. But when I was reading about the Weimar Republic, the hyperinflation that led to Hitler demonizing one, group of people in the government, and then their parliament there was an arson that burnt their parliament. Did you know? I mean, I'm sure you knew that, right?
I mean, tertiary in a sense, but yeah, I knew it happened. I couldn't tell you where in the chronology it was.
And that's what Hitler used to further demonize his political opponents and assume the role of chancellor or whatever, and take over. And I was like, oh my God. Like, I was like, I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but like that was something, like when I was reading that, I mean, I literally like put my pen down, was like, like, it's like I just want to go somewhere. Like I always joke with my wife, like the Michael Scott quote, whenever he finds out that Jan Levinson's going to get fired for the job he's interviewing for, and he just walks in, he's like, let's run away and get a bungalow somewhere. Like that, I get that feeling. I was like, tell my wife, like, let's just run away and get a bungalow, let's get out of here, because like it creeps me out to think about that stuff. I can't live there too long. But oh my God,
there's no exit, and right, like where the hell do you go? It's like just the whole world is
Bitcoin is the exit.
Bitcoin is the exit.
Exactly. It's like, where do you go? I kind of like see why Elon would want to go to Mars. Like, I get it now. Like, let's go there and start again. But I think that to give people hope, I think that like Bitcoiners, like by and large, and people in general, are just like, they just want to be happy. They just want, like, they don't care what you do. You know what I mean? Like, that's what I don't get. Why does everybody care what other people do right now? It's like, just live your life.
We got big enough problems, man.
Yeah.
Like, leave everybody alone. Like, they're not the reason your life sucks. It's because you're just looking at everybody else's for solutions to your problems. Like, you're just trying to point fingers at somebody. Like, leave them alone.
Yeah.
Like, leave people alone.
dude, I could. Oh man. Well, hey, I'll let you go, because we've been going for a while. Like hour and
such
40.
such as Bitcoin conversations, man. So that shit goes.
Dude, I could keep going. We'll have to maybe do this again sometime. And
All right, sounds good, man.
but dude, thanks for coming on. I really appreciate it. And just let people know where they can find you.
Yeah. I got the show, Bitcoin Audible. Do interviews and guys' takes, and then obviously the main format is read and make every great piece and every cool idea and the study of anything and everything Bitcoin available in audio, so that you don't have to go read all the articles yourselves. I got 507 will be today's if I manage to get it out before the meetup tonight. Not going anywhere. Just still building it out. You can check it out at bitcoinaudible.com. I've now got a quick search for the whole library. So if you're looking for like Shelling Out by Nick Szabo or 21 Lessons by Gigi or, the BitTorrent series or Gradually Then Suddenly by Parker Lewis, later just type MS in and it'll just pop right up. And you can listen to any of them. And then I'm at The Crypto Economy on Twitter and at Bitcoin Audible. You can find me at either. And of course, I've got my other little guilty pleasure podcast, Shitcoin Insider, where I have a lot of fun with that one.
That's something I got my first when I was on that comedians podcast. All these comments on YouTube, they were like, "Oh, he's a maxi pad," blah blah blah. Because they asked me, they were like, "What is like all the other cryptocurrencies compared to Bitcoin?" And I was like, I would compare it as like people who want an Oreo but are willing to, like, Oreos compared to Hydrox cookies. Yeah. And I was like, it's like people buy Hydrox because they want an Oreo, but they're willing to pay less money for something that tastes like shit.
Yeah.
It
tastes like slightly reminiscent of like kind of a stale Oreo.
Yeah, exactly. And I was like, hey, that kind of came on the fly. That was a good one. I was on a comedian's podcast, got some laughs. I was like, wow, that was good. And man, in the comments, we were like, fucking maxi pad, blah blah blah. I was like, Jesus, oh god.
That's how it goes.
Yeah. So such is life. All right. Well, everybody, thanks for sticking in, and Guy, thanks for coming on and doing a marathon with me. I honestly didn't know what time it was, so that's amazing. But
what are we at? Started this at we're at 2 hours and 20 minutes. We're like 2 hours and 25 minutes.
Wait, are you serious? Yep. Oh my god.
Time flies, man. Yeah, talking about Bitcoin. Don't even get started if you don't want it to go that.
I'm so sorry. I actually thought it was like an hour and 40 minutes.
You know what I'm going to do when we cut this off? I'm going to be sitting here right in front of my computer talking Bitcoin. So I do it all day.
Holy crap. I can't believe that. I might have to make this like a two-parter or something. Dude, that's awesome. All right. Well, hey, thanks again for coming on, and I appreciate it. Thanks everybody for listening.
Yeah, man.
Thanks again to Guy for coming on and for hanging in there for 2+ hours. That was a marathon interview, but I really appreciated it. It was fun to hear some of his stories, how him and his brother got into it. And I like hearing stuff about, back in 2011, them being up all night drinking beer and talking about how this is the future. And little did they know it was the future, but also how far off it was. So really appreciate Guy coming on. You can check him out, GuySwann.com, GUYSWANN.com. And then on Twitter, he's got his handle at the Crypto Economy, and then at Bitcoin Audible and at Shitcoin Insider. So thanks again to Guy for coming on, and thank you guys for listening. If you want to reach out, you can email me. It is bitcoinmadesimplepodcast@gmail.com. And my Twitter handle is at Bitcoin Simply. Thanks again, everybody, for listening. I'll talk to you later.